War. Something that we today view as nothing less of a disaster, on the same line as an earthquake or a tsunami. Hundreds of years ago, war was viewed through a much different lens. Showing your country's brute strength on the battlefield was a point of pride that had to be taken seriously, unless you fall victim to a neighbor who does. So, what happens when two of the proudest martial societies of their day, usually separated by the tallest mountain range on Earth, meet each other on the battlefield? A clash of titans in northern India will see one come out on top, and the other fleeing in utter defeat, in what has come to be called the Nepal-Sikh War. The Nepal-Sikh War wasn't something that was always inevitable. In fact, quite the opposite. The Sikh Empire only emerged onto the political scene in 1799 as a conglomerate of people in northwest India who became unified under the religion of Sikhism. While the Sikhs may have been the newcomer to the Indian subcontinent, they were far from weak and could easily be described in strength to the growing Nepalese Empire. However, these two empires were separated by the Himalayan mountains, neither seeing the need to interfere in the other's business, that is, until 1806. With the execution of the Mad King, Rana Bahadur Shah, a new man from a new family came to the reins of power in Nepal. With the massacre of the Nepalese nobility, a friend of the dead king, Bhimsen Thapa, became the new Mukhtiar, a role at the head of the kingdom that was similar to a prime minister. After securing his position in Kathmandu, Bhimsen Thapa orders a resumption to the campaigns that had unified Nepal up until this point. Bhimsen orders two family members with 25,000 soldiers each to conquer the kingdom of Kangra. One of these generals is the brother of Bhimsen Thapa, a man named Nayan Thapa. The other is Bhimsen's older cousin, a man known to many as the living tiger of Nepal, Amar Singh Thapa. To reach Kangra, the Nepalese armies have to first conquer the kingdom of Surmur, which they do with very little resistance. The conquest of Kangra, however, was to be no easy task. Its king, Sansar Chand, was an experienced military man who was notorious for enlarging his army by hiring thousands of mercenaries, mostly from Tibet. Sansar Chand gave battle to the Nepalese, this proving to be a mistake as the Gorkha cut his mercenaries down, kukri in hand. This forced the king of Kangra in a fighting retreat to the edges of his kingdom. By April of 1809, all that remained of Kangra was the stronghold and namesake fort of Kangra, in the far west of Sansar Chand's lands. With no option left but surrender or defeat, Sansar Chand went to the only person, with the exception of the British, who was capable of defeating the Gurkha, Ranjit Singh, the Lion of the Punjab and the Emperor of the Sikhs. Sansar Chand asked Ranjit to expel the Gurkha from his land. The Emperor agrees, but solely on the condition that all of Kangra becomes part of the Sikh Empire. Sansar Chand agreed, and Ranjit Singh started to assemble his army to face his most daunting foe yet. Meanwhile, at Fort Kangra, the brother of Bhimsen Thapa, Nayan Thapa, excited by the complete conquest of Kangra, begins the siege, despite words from his older cousin, Amar, to wait for reinforcement and resupply. The reluctant siege of the towering fortress of Kangra begins in May of 1809. Even if everything went perfect, it would be months before the Nepalese could break through the walls. With the siege starting, Ranjit Singh began concluding his preparations, assembling a force of 10,000 Sikhs, who at this point were some of the best and most well-supplied soldiers in the world, even when compared to the likes of the British or the Prussians. Gunpowder, something that Nepal had but used sparsely, was the main component of the Sikh military. If used correctly, the Nepalese would be no match for Ranjit Singh. When Amar Singh Thapa learned of the approaching Sikh army, he proceeded to send an ultimatum to Ranjit Singh. He demanded that the Sikhs allow Nepal to conquer Kangra and the rest of the Kashmir Valley. However, the Nepalese were now in Ranjit's corner of India, and he made the rules here. The Sikh army, then proceeded in blocking off all the entrances to the valley that Kangra rested in, trapping the Nepalese, who huddled around the fort that they still did not own. From May to July of 1809, the Nepalese spent their summer starving, eventually being forced to eat their own way out of the Kangra Valley, killing and consuming their horses for survival. While inside Kangra Fort, the defenders were well supplied by means of 2 freshwater wells and a large garden that had been set up in the courtyard, feasting while their besiegers starved. After starving for over a month, and with no sign of the Sikhs lifting their siege, the Nepalese prepared for their breakout. Focusing their attention on the eastern pass, the hungry and amorous Gurkha punched a hole through the Sikh line, or so they had thought. Soon the Nepalese found out that they had only been funneled into a trap. Exiting the Kangra Valley and into the Gandesh Valley, the Sikhs lined up their cannons on either side of the pass, killing thousands of Nepalese as they surged by. When the Sikh cannons could no longer fire at the faraway Nepalese, Ranjit Singh ordered for 1,000 horsemen to continue the chase of the routing Nepalese. Bringing up the rear guard was Nayant Thapa. He and a few thousand Gurkha attempted to hold the line, himself falling in the chaos. Amar Thapa and the rest of the Nepalese army finally found safety in the refuge of a fort at the end of the Gandesh Valley that the Nepalese had only recently conquered. The Sikhs, however, did not stop their chase and neared the fort in hopes of trapping and besieging the fleeing Nepalese. The Nepalese, with no supplies to endure even a second of another siege, reluctantly sallied out of their fort, prepared to face the Sikhs in a fair battle. As the two armies clashed, they were both matched, the Nepalese numbers unable to overwhelm the Sikh artillery. But by the end of the day, the exhausted and malnourished Nepalese began their second retreat. The Gurkha were forced all the way to the Satluj River, where they again give the Sikhs a battle. With their backs at the river, Ranjit Singh had only to push them into it. The Nepalese began a terrible and ill-planned retreat across the river. Once on the other side, the Sikhs stopped. This would be the new border between Nepal and Sikh land, as chosen by Ranjit Singh. The Nepalese never dared cross it again. Both the Nepalese and the Sikhs were some of the most militaristic-minded empires to ever rise in India. Any seriously long drawn-out fight would have been nothing short of a bloodbath on both sides. In only a few short months, nearly 15,000 people died, mostly on the Nepalese side. Luckily, we will never have to know the outcome of such a total war between these two societies. One interesting point that has came to my mind while I wrote this script is, what if the Sikhs and Nepalese teamed up against the British Empire? They both had to fight them eventually, and together I think there would have been a chance to contain the East India Company. But we shall never know.